You want to? Okay. Okay.
That's terrific. So you can share your screen there with everyone, and that's perfect. And so maybe as the girls are presenting and as they're setting up there, feel free to again post in the chat box any questions or comments or suggestions. As again, Neri definitely is always about collaboration and cooperation and collegiality and support for each other in our practice. So yeah, comment as the presentations are ongoing.
Okay, so can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Great, great. So my name is Colette Saunders, and I kind of found NERI when I started out my own Masters by Research back in 2016. I had kind of battled with, will it be an exploratory study or perspectives of study, and I felt it didn't really sit right with me because my own background is early childhood care and education. And I have this great degree, loads of expertise, experience, but I'm not being recognised, and thousands of other practitioners like me are not being recognised. However, when I looked around me, I saw that in other professions, would say they are gaining that professional recognition, and I asked myself, what is it they have that we don't? And one of the things that stood out for me was that they had a trade union representation and professional bodies, but more so for me, my focus was on how trade unionization raised the professional profile of the early years professions that I was looking out at, and would say healthcare and other teaching professions. So my question then became a kind of battle for a while with what my question might be. And I formulated this one here: how do I improve my practice as a volunteer activist supporting trade unionization of Ireland's early years workforce? And it took me a long time to come to that, because I came across the term self-study at the NERI meets, and I felt like, is my research going to be good enough to call it self-study? And then for a long time, I battled with a serious case of imposter syndrome, and sometimes I still do. And I think that's because even though I have the early years qualification, I'm a mom at the moment now. I work part-time in higher education. I'm a voluntary committee member on our local preschool, but I'm not actually working on the floor with the children. So I kind of battle with that as well a little bit, kind of asking myself, do I have the right to use the term self-study? But I guess more importantly for me, because I could see around me the possibilities that could come from becoming organised and collectively organised for any, we'd say, group within society, I decided that I'd get involved with a trade union myself. And that's, I suppose, how I ended up with the title volunteer activist, because I decided to get involved with the unions that were hoping to represent the early years workforce. So these are some of the areas I hope to address, and maybe not in that order, but hopefully they'll kind of jump out at you as I go through the presentation, okay? So my motivations, so there was loads of influencing factors. Every year, early years professionals sign on to social welfare because they're only paid for maybe 38 weeks. The exception would be in full-time settings where they're employed for the year-round. So there you'd have like babies to after school, whereas in some sessional settings, you'd only have children that are of preschool age. Okay, so they'd be there from 9 in the morning till 12 in the afternoon. And then the people that work with them would get paid for those 38 weeks. Just by, I suppose, I kind of had this, I started this study back at undergraduate level in IT Sligo, and I kind of decided back then that I'd like to take it to research it further after I graduated. But at the time then, I remember just having general conversations with people in my year, and the big feeling was they just wanted to wait and see what the union would do, if a union would come and represent them. I also had that sense of looking around me and realizing, oh my God, there's hardly anybody in my year staying in childcare. They're moving into, they're going abroad to the United Arab Emirates to teach over there. They're going on to do masters in occupational therapy or speech and language therapy. They're going on to do teaching, or they're leaving the sector entirely because they just got paid that bit more. then there was a sense of nobody really seeing us as professionals. We're just babysitters, we're just childminders. And here's me sitting in the middle of all of this thinking, oh my God, I've just worked really hard, getting an honours degree, and this is the professional value that I'm hearing back from people that also have the same degree as me. What does that say to me about the value they have in themselves? As well as that, there's the challenge of lack of progression. I have friends that we say went and worked in private early year settings. They're level 8s like myself. They've also done LINC, the Leadership for Inclusion module. So they become the inclusion coordinators in the earlier setting they work in. Others have gone on to do AIM, which is supporting children with additional needs within the preschool environment. But they're at this level where they're really highly educated and they have experience, but they can't go any further because that's it. There's no career progression, okay? So it's really, really downheartening. It's really kind of demoralizing. So there's no opportunities for them for advancement. A lot of people I spoke to with as well, when I was out on my student placements, they just love the job. They don't see the need for a union because they get on so well with their boss. And maybe they have a relationship with their boss where they minded each other's children down through the years, or they have a family feel to the setting that they're in. And they're not doing it for the money, they're doing it because they love working with children. So these are just the next part here is my pre-understanding. So this is something that I just came across recently while working on revisions for my master's thesis. So my pre-understanding, as I understood it, informed my motivation. So it brought with me all of this knowledge, insights, and experience, and it informed my pre-understanding. But I also brought with me what I didn't see, my partial experience and lack of understanding of other areas. So I kind of came into it blinkers. I knew as a level 8, I wanted to be represented by a trade union. I could see the benefits in terms of professional pay, recognition, status. You know, I could see all of that. But there were people who felt that the sector didn't need a union because it was just going to fragment the sector even further. So again, I did have blinkers on, and it took me a long time. I battled with that for a long time while writing this research. Again, this comes back to the solution as I saw it. So I was looking around the world. I was looking towards the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, worldwide, European and international level, those working in the early years. The literature as well was quite telling. My lived experiences were real. They were not just in my head, and they were grounded in theory. So I often wondered, why don't people come together and just do this? And I came across this concept of collective consciousness and social union. I came across of a lot of, we'd say, low expectations. You know, nothing's ever going to change. I've been in this sector for 30 years. Nothing is ever going to change. Lack of awareness around, we'd say, unions and the work they do. Being kind of very sensitive to the fact that when unions are in the media, it's normally in relation to industrial action. But there's a huge process that comes before that, before it gets to that stage. So again, raising awareness around the actual work that trade unions do. And then again, this is something I only read recently as well. I have a desire to be involved, but at the same time, I know I'm not going to change the world, but I want to be part of the change. So that kind of echoes some of the sentiments of Marx 11. We have a responsibility to change the world, not only to study it. Doing your bit on your patch, you know, within what you can do, and I suppose following through on that desire and having the courage to follow through on that desire, because again, action research allowed me to express this part of myself and I suppose live my values, which I'll get to in a while. But I came to it myself. It wasn't a taught methodological approach in Sligo. I found it myself. So again, I was kind of getting comfortable with being uncomfortable while having these conversations with myself. And then in relation to knowing as well that we have a constitutional right to form a union, but we are not actualizing that right. So what's stopping us? We are active citizens with rights and responsibilities, but we seem to be shying away from responsibilities to our profession. So again, these are just the things that I was coming across as I read around my topic. I have a little visitor here for a second. Sorry. Yeah, very good. Now out you go.
They're
Close the door.
turning the fish.
You're okay. Just dry them off in the bathroom. Or out you go.
Dry them.
Okay. Will you go back out to Timothy? Look, I'm busy here now. Go on, out you go. Right, sit up my lap. Sit up my lap. Oh, sorry, guys. sorry. So I
Best
should
proof of concept ever.
continue.
That's fine.
Oh, God. So what I was seeing was that the workforce seemed to be unaware that they are entitled to be part of a society that will support them. Okay? So it's okay to want to be part of a union. There are mechanisms in place that will support this. And there seemed to be a lot of fear. So again, that kind of echoed the feminist perspective of Maguire. So there was a need to shake up the power differentials, but would that actually happen? So my experiences all seem to be linked with representation and voice or empowerment. There's a large percentage of the early years workforce that earn a living less than 12 or 30, less than the living wage, and that was last year per hour, regardless of qualification level. So how can they be expected to participate fully in society if they're not earning a living wage? And what representation or sense of agency do they have in order to help them overcome this position? So these were questions that were kind of going around in my head as I was working through the research. So having awareness of my values that guide me in my practice began to develop. So I became aware the values base of my action research project had its origins in social justice, specifically relational social justice, and its emphasis on the dimensions of recognition, respect, discrimination, representation, voice, domination, and oppression. So that was new learning for me. Again, more knowledge came to the surface. So social justice. I know you did. It's okay. Now listen, I have to give this important information, okay? So social justice has been described as an idea that mobilizes people to act in order to bring about change. And this again was new to me. I was only learning about these ideas. Social justice encompasses social groups who share characteristics such as class, gender, ethnic identity, and who experience various patterns of unfairness or inequality as a result. And then the values base of my research became the golden thread, as described by McNiff, which helped to bring, and is still bringing, the different parts of my research together, because as I speak, I'm working on revisions. So I'll be submitting to our exam board in IT Sligo in May, hopefully. So this was my, I suppose, a cyclical representation, courtesy of McNiff again, of how I see my values enacted in practice. So the R is representation, and then the V and E symbolize voice or empowerment. So I realized, when I reached out to the union, at the time it was called Impact, is now Forsa, I wanted to organize an information meeting in my area so potential early years members can meet union representatives. So we organized that meeting. I kind of took it upon myself to speak live on air to highlight the realities of working in the early years sector on local radio stations. I then began to move into the space where I needed to get views and opinions. So I circulated a survey to some of the newest members that joined following the information meeting that I helped to organize. A big challenge there was, okay, I wanted to hear people's views, but they weren't sharing them. The surveys that I was circulating weren't being completed. So I got in touch with each of the new members and completed the surveys over a phone. The preliminary results from the surveys indicated lack of motivation, lack of knowledge around the work that unions do, and dissatisfaction. So there was kind of a void where there should have been a sense of empowerment once the individual had joined their trade union. I came across then the works of Freire and in Pedagogy of the Oppressed when I started this study, and what interested me were his generative themes and how they move in concentric circles from the general to the particular, unfolding again into as many sub-themes, each identified as tasks to be fulfilled, to be the action research cycle that I was engaging in, and the sub-cycles which began to emerge along the way. So an example of that is during action research cycle 1, speaking live on air. Okay, so I'm asking myself, how do I go about this? Do I know enough? What do I need to know and able to be in order to be able to communicate? So recognize as a volunteer activist, I have very little experience, but I want to make a difference. Is there anything else I can do or question? So then I nominated myself to the early education branch and became the secretary within Impact Trade Union. That presented opportunities for training. So I attended training in Dublin and sat in at the open policy debate of the new National Early Years Strategy. I think it was not last year, the year before, 2018. I began reading around the area. And again, this is just me informing myself. I'm reflecting, I'm acting, I'm doing things to kind of inform myself. And then I'm asking myself, is it helping? So how do I give myself voice and empower myself so that I'm in a position to improve my practice and support the trade unionization of the early years workforce? So Action Research Cycle 2 kind of coincided with the more in-depth data gathering associated with the master's thesis. So I had face-to-face interviews. So all in all, I suppose it's worth mentioning, I did qualitative interviewing and they were semi-structured. I had, for the entire project, about 21 participants. So the results are limited and it's not on a very big scale, but the people that I did interview and engage with were people that were working in the early years, whether they were practitioners or owners or community managers. I made sure to have a fair representation. I also ensured that I had the opinions of those working in the trade unions as organizers, because it was interesting for me to see how they were experiencing trying to organize the early years workforce. Action Research Cycle 2 focused on thematic analysis of surveys and interviews. Subsequent, I'm kind of in this stage now down here, publication of findings, and then sharing the information with unions via an official publication. So I'm still working through that cycle at the moment. And as you could predict, there was more generative, transformative experiences from which this sub-cycle emerged.
You're breaking up a little.
So I was asking myself, the information meetings are still happening now. SIPTU are kind of on board now as well. Interviews that union literacy is a huge issue. So I have a very weak connection. The ladies have my slides down for anyone, and new knowledge, and I knew to reach out to unions and share this knowledge because they seemed to be operating in a way that would suggest that we knew what unions were and the work they did. But more often back of the room, what's a sectoral employment order? What's collective representation? What do unions actually do? So I was hearing in the meetings that I was attending, this kind of issues were arising. So it was really important to me to make the unions aware of this. To get the message out there, do you know who to reach out to if you need help to understand what unions are about?
Okay.
So one of the big issues that came from the field of self-study. Okay.
No, the connection I think is dropping, or is it just on my side?
No, it's dropping.
Okay, yeah. So we'll pause there, Colette, if that's okay. But sorry. But as Bernie's just after posting, there, it's definitely a self-study, and you've invested so much of yourself in the reflective perspective. And let everyone comment in the chat. It was definitely very interesting, and we loved the visitor as well into the presentation. So thanks very much, Colette.